My son called me a freeloader. He screamed it at me while throwing a utility bill in my lap. He thought my years of raising his children and running his home were worthless because I didn't get a paycheck. So I decided to take a vacation. A long one. And let him see the real-world invoice for all the work his freeloader mother actually does. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know, I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Martha Thornton, and at 67 years old, my life was a testament to the art of invisible labor. 5 years ago, after my dear husband Charles passed away, my son Reggie and his wife Simone had sat me down for a family meeting. Their first child, my grandson Leo, was just a baby, and Simone was about to return to her demanding corporate law job. "Mom," Reggie had said, his voice full of a smooth, practiced concern, "it just makes sense for you to move in with us. You're all alone in that big house and we could really use your help with Leo. It's a win-win." I had seen it not as a win-win but as my sacred duty, my new purpose. I sold my home, the home Charles and I had shared for 40 years, and moved into the guest room of their sprawling suburban house. I used a portion of my own savings to help them with the down payment on that very house, a fact they seemed to have conveniently forgotten. I became the live-in grandmother, a role I embraced with all the love in my heart. But over the next 5 years, as their second child, Maya, arrived and their careers soared, my role quietly, insidiously shifted. I was no longer grandma here to help. I was the unpaid 24/7 nanny. I was the cook who made sure a hot meal was ready when they walked in, exhausted at 8 o'clock at night. I was the housekeeper who kept their sterile, minimalist home immaculate. I was the chauffeur who did the school runs, the grocery shopper, the laundress, the household manager. I was the silent, invisible CEO of their entire domestic life, and my compensation was a roof over my head and the precious, fleeting moments I got to spend with my grandchildren. Reggie, my son of 43, and Simone, 41, were a formidable team, a power couple in the making. He was a rising star in finance. She was on the partner track at her law firm. Their lives were a whirlwind of important meetings, client dinners, and weekend networking events. A life made possible only because I was at home running the engine room of their family. They were completely, arrogantly blind to this fact. They didn't see my labor. They only saw my presence as a cost. An extra mouth to feed. An extra room to heat. An extra line item on the utility bills. My immense contribution, the thousands upon thousands of dollars in childcare and household management services I provided for free every single month, was completely invisible to them. It was simply expected. Their gratitude in the beginning had been replaced by a kind of casual, entitled acceptance, and then more recently by a growing, palpable resentment. My presence, once a win-win, was now a burden. "Mom, do you really need to keep the thermostat at 72? Reggie would ask, striding in from the cold, his face pinched with annoyance. "This heating bill is astronomical. You're not made of money, you know." The irony of him saying that to me was so profound it was almost breathtaking. Simone's disrespect was a quieter, more cutting thing. She treated me not as her mother-in-law but as the help. She would leave me lists of chores on the kitchen counter. She would critique my cooking, my cleaning, my way of folding the laundry. "Martha," she'd say, her voice dripping with a condescending sweetness, "I've shown you how I like the towels folded. It's a simple system. I don't understand why you can't get it right." I endured it all. I swallowed my pride, my hurt, my growing anger. I did it for Leo and Maya, my beautiful grandchildren, who I loved with a fierceness that was the only true, uncomplicated joy in my life. I was their constant, their soft place to land in a house that was often filled with the tense, ambitious energy of their parents. To leave would be to abandon them, and that was a price I was not willing to pay. So I stayed. I became smaller, quieter, trying to take up as little space as possible. I was a ghost in their beautiful home, a silent, tireless servant whose work was as invisible as her own feelings. They saw my sacrifice not as a gift but as an obligation. They saw my love as a service. And they were about to learn, in the most spectacular and financially devastating way possible, that they had woefully, catastrophically miscalculated the value of my labor. The bill was coming due. The day the final line was crossed, the day my quiet, simmering endurance finally curdled into a cold, hard resolve, began like any other. It was a Tuesday in the dead of winter, the sky a flat, unforgiving gray, the wind rattling the windows of Reggie and Simone's oversized, underloved house. I had been up since dawn. I had made breakfast for the children, packed their lunches and driven them to school through the slushy streets. I had returned to a house that looked like a storm had passed through it. Dirty dishes in the sink, clothes strewn about, the lingering chaos of my children's hurried, self-important morning departure. I spent my day as I always did, restoring order. I did the laundry, I tidied the rooms, I prepared a slow-cooked beef stew for dinner. Its warm, comforting aroma a small act of defiance against the coldness that had seeped into the very walls of that house. By the time I picked the kids up from school, helped them with their homework and set the table for dinner, my old bones were aching with a deep, profound weariness. Reggie came home late as usual, his face a thundercloud. A big deal at his finance firm had fallen through, and he was in a foul, volatile mood. He dropped his briefcase on the floor with a thud and strode into the kitchen, where I was just putting the finishing touches on the stew. He didn't greet me. He didn't ask about his children. He just ripped open the day's mail, his eyes scanning for more bad news. He found it in the form of the monthly electric bill. He stared at it, his face growing darker, his jaw tightening. He looked up, his eyes full of a misplaced, free-floating rage landing on me. I was sitting in the small armchair in the corner of the kitchen, resting my aching back for just a moment before serving dinner. "Unbelievable," he muttered, his voice a low growl. He stormed over to where I was sitting. He didn't just show me the bill. He didn't just complain about it. He took the thin paper envelope and, with a flick of his wrist, threw it directly into my lap. The gesture was so unexpected, so full of contempt, it was like a physical blow. I stared down at the bill, then back up at him, my heart beginning to pound. "Look at this," he screamed, his voice suddenly a raw, ugly thing, all his professional polish stripped away to reveal the spoiled, entitled man-child beneath. "It's outrageous. $300. Maybe if you weren't sitting around all day running the heat like it's your personal tropical island, we could actually afford to live in this house." I flinched, his words a spray of venom. Sitting around all day? I, who had been on my feet since 5 in the morning, cleaning his house, caring for his children, cooking his dinner? Simone chose that moment to walk in, looking impeccable in her corporate lawyer's suit. She took in the scene, my shocked, hurt face, her husband's raging one, and said nothing, her silence a clear, tacit endorsement of his cruelty. And then he delivered the final, dehumanizing blow. "Freeloaders don't get to be warm," he shouted, his face contorted with a rage that had nothing to do with the electric bill and everything to do with his own failures. "You live here, you eat our food, you contribute nothing. Nothing. You are a burden, mother. A constant, expensive, useless burden." The words hung in the air, ugly and sharp and irreparable. Freeloader. Burden. Useless. He had finally said it. He had finally given voice to the contempt he had clearly felt for so long. He saw my years of unpaid, back-breaking labor not as a gift, not as a sacrifice, but as a net loss, a drain on his resources. I looked at him, at my son, and I saw a stranger, a cruel, pathetic man lashing out at his own mother to soothe the wounds of his own bruised ego. And I looked at his wife, at her cold, silent, complicit face. And in that moment, something inside me, the quiet, accommodating, long-suffering mother, simply died. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not defend myself. A strange, glacial calm settled over me. I slowly picked the electric bill up from my lap. I folded it neatly in half and placed it on the end table beside me. Then I looked up at him, my eyes clear and cold. "You are right, Reginald," I said, my voice quiet, but imbued with a new, chilling authority. "It is time I stopped being such a burden on you and your wife. I will make other arrangements." He scoffed, already mistaking my calm for surrender. "Good," he snapped, turning his back on me. "It's about time." He had no idea what kind of arrangements I was about to make. He thought he had just put his freeloading mother in her place. He had, in fact, just fired the unpaid CEO of his entire domestic life. And he was about to learn just how much her services were truly worth. That night I did not sleep. I lay in my small bed in the guest room listening to the sounds of the house. The angry, muffled argument between Reggie and Simone after their disastrous dinner. The eventual resentful silence. The house settling around me, a place that was no longer my home but my prison. But the despair I had felt for so long was gone, replaced by a cold, methodical clarity. He had called me a freeloader. He had thrown a bill at me. He had declared that I did not deserve to be warm. Very well. The time for quiet endurance was over. The time for a quiet demonstration had begun. I rose before dawn, my movements silent, purposeful. I packed a single small suitcase. Not with all my belongings. That would take too long and make too much noise. I packed only the essentials. A few changes of clothes, my medications, my toiletries, and my most important documents, which I kept in a small locked file box. Then I sat down at the small desk in my room and wrote a letter. It was not a letter of anger, not a letter of pain. It was a letter of chilling, polite, malicious compliance. My dearest Reggie and Simone, it began. You are absolutely right. I have been a freeloader, a burden, and it was wrong of me to take advantage of your generosity for so long. I have been thoughtless, and I am deeply sorry for the financial strain my presence has caused you. To make amends and to give you both a much-needed and well-deserved break from the burden of my care, I have decided to take a 1-month vacation to rest and reflect. I will be staying with my sister Clara, who has so graciously offered to host me. Please do not worry about me at all. And please do not contact me. I need this time to myself. I am sure you will all manage perfectly well without me. After all, how much work can one useless old woman truly be? With my deepest love and gratitude for all you've done, Mom. I placed the note on the kitchen counter where I knew they would see it when they came down for their morning coffee. The final touch was the electric bill. I placed it right next to the note with a crisp $20 bill tucked under it. A down payment on my share. Let them puzzle over that. At 5:30 in the morning, as the first gray light began to creep into the sky, I let myself out the back door, my small suitcase in my hand. I walked down their manicured suburban street to the corner bus stop, a ghost slipping away into the pre-dawn chill. The taxi I had called the night before arrived precisely on time. The train station, please, I told the driver. My sister Clara lived 3 states away, a long but manageable train ride. She was the one person in the world I could count on, my fierce, loyal older sister. When I had called her the night before, my voice a low, urgent whisper, and told her what had happened, her reaction had been a string of furious, unladylike curses that had, for the first time in days, made me smile. That ungrateful, spineless boy, she had hissed. And that venomous wife of his. Of course you're coming here, Martha. The guest room is always ready for you. You stay as long as you need. Let's see how they manage without their freeloader. As the taxi pulled away from their quiet, sleeping street, I did not look back. I did not feel a single pang of sadness. I felt only a profound, exhilarating sense of liberation. For 5 years, I had been a servant in their lives, my labor taken for granted, my presence devalued. They had defined my worth by my lack of a financial contribution. They had no idea of the true staggering value of my non-monetary work. They had no idea that the entire complex and exhausting infrastructure of their successful lives rested on the foundation of my unpaid, invisible labor. And I had just, with a single quiet act of defiance, walked off the job. The train ride was long but peaceful. I watched the cities and towns of my country scroll by, a world full of people living their own complicated lives. For the first time in a very long time, I was not worried about my grandchildren's school lunches, about Reggie's dry cleaning, about Simone's dinner party plans. I was just Martha, a woman on a journey, a woman on vacation. When I arrived at Clara's small, cozy house, she enveloped me in a hug that was so full of love and righteous fury on my behalf that it almost brought me to tears. You did the right thing, honey, she said, her voice fierce. You did the only thing you could do. Now you just sit back, put your feet up, and we'll wait for the fireworks to begin. And believe me, she added with a grim, satisfied smile, they will begin. He was right. The quiet, efficient engine of their household had just been shut down. And I knew with a certainty that was as sweet as it was cold, that it wouldn't take long for the entire glittering, fraudulent machine of their lives to grind to a spectacular, chaotic, and very, very expensive halt. The first inkling that their perfectly managed world was beginning to unravel came on Monday morning, just 2 days after my quiet departure. It came in the form of a frantic, panicked text message from Reggie to my old, now silent, cell phone, a message my sister Clara, with a certain grim satisfaction, read aloud to me as we sat on her sunny porch drinking iced tea. Mom, where are you? Maya missed the school bus. Simone had to cancel her 8 a.m. client meeting to drive her. You were supposed to handle the school run. Call me. I just smiled and took another sip of my tea. The first domino had fallen. What followed was a week-long symphony of their spectacular self-inflicted implosion, a story pieced together from a series of increasingly desperate texts and voicemails that Clara would relay to me each evening like dispatches from a distant, chaotic war zone. The school run, the one I had handled every single day for 5 years, was the first casualty. On Tuesday, it was Simone who was late for her own important meeting after a furious argument with Reggie about whose turn it was to drive the kids. On Wednesday, they forgot to pack Leo's lunch, resulting in a tearful call from the school nurse. On Thursday, Maya's soccer practice was missed entirely because neither of them could get away from work in time to pick her up. Their pristine, minimalist home, once kept spotless by my daily, tireless efforts, quickly descended into chaos. The laundry piled up, a mountain of unwashed school uniforms and expensive work clothes. The sink filled with dirty dishes, their gourmet takeout containers now a sad, greasy monument to their incompetence. The floors grew sticky, the bathrooms untidy. The beautiful, orderly sanctuary they had been so proud of was, without its silent, unpaid housekeeper, revealing itself to be just another messy, chaotic house inhabited by 2 overwhelmed, incompetent adults. Their professional lives, the very reason for my initial sacrifice, began to suffer. Reggie, now responsible for getting his own suits to the dry cleaner and making his own breakfast, was constantly late for work, his usual smooth, confident demeanor replaced by a harried, frazzled energy. Simone, forced to juggle her demanding legal career with the actual hands-on work of motherhood she had so long outsourced to me, missed a crucial filing deadline, earning a sharp reprimand from a senior partner. Their life, which had run so smoothly on the invisible tracks of my labor, had completely, utterly derailed. The most satisfying reports came from a source I hadn't anticipated, my 10-year-old grandson Leo. He would call me secretly in the evenings, his voice a low whisper from his bedroom. "Grandma," he'd said on the 3rd night, "are you ever coming back?" "I'm just taking a little rest, my love," I told him gently. "Is everything all right there?" "No," he'd replied, his voice small. "Mommy and Daddy are fighting all the time. They're yelling about laundry and who was supposed to buy milk. And we had pizza for dinner again. From a box." The quiet tragedy in his voice was a more damning indictment of their parenting than any legal document could ever be. By the end of the first week, their panicked texts had turned into desperate, pleading voicemails. "Mom, please, we need to talk," Reggie's voice, stripped of all its usual arrogance, pleaded on my old phone. This is not working. We can't manage without you. The house is a disaster. The kids are miserable. We miss you. You miss my free labor," I thought, a cold, hard smile on my face. "You miss my cooking. You miss my cleaning. You don't miss me." Then came the call from Simone, a call so full of a grudging, resentful defeat it was almost comical. "Martha," she'd said, her voice tight, I concede. You have made your point. We are struggling. When are you planning on ending this vacation of yours?" A vacation. That's what she still thought this was. A petty, temporary protest. She had no idea that this was not a vacation. It was a permanent retirement. A retirement from her, from Reggie, from their endless, thankless servitude. I did not respond to their calls, their texts, their pleas. I let them steep in the chaotic, expensive, and entirely self-inflicted consequences of their own ingratitude. They had thrown the electric bill at me and called me a freeloader. They had no idea that I was not just the one keeping the house warm. I was the one keeping their entire world from burning to the ground. And now all I had to do was sit back from 3 states away and enjoy the warmth of the beautiful, spectacular fire. The bill for my services I knew was about to arrive on their doorstep. And it was going to be a very, very big one. The second week of my vacation at my sister Clara's house was a study in contrasts. My days were filled with a peace I hadn't known in years. Gentle walks, long conversations, the simple joy of reading a book without interruption. Their days, as I learned from a series of increasingly frantic voicemails, were a descent into pure, unadulterated chaos. They had, it seemed, finally accepted that I was not coming back anytime soon. And so, faced with the complete collapse of their domestic lives, they were forced to do the one thing they had never, in their wildest dreams, imagined they would have to do, They had to pay for the services I had provided for free for 5 long years. The first hint of this came from a voicemail from Reggie, his voice a mixture of fury and disbelief. "Mom, do you have any idea how much a last-minute nanny costs? It's outrageous. This is all your fault." I just smiled. "Oh, my dear son," I thought. "You have no idea." What followed was a beautiful, satisfying unraveling of their financial and domestic lives, a story told in the desperate messages they left on my silent phone. They had, it turned out, been forced to hire a premium last-minute childcare agency to cover the school runs, the after-school care, the meal preparation for Leo and Maya. These agencies, as I knew, charged a steep price for reliable on-demand help. Then came the housekeeping. Their pristine, minimalist home, now a disaster zone of piled-up laundry and dirty dishes, required not just a simple cleaning, but a full-scale professional intervention. They had hired a high-end housekeeping service, the kind that sends a team of uniformed cleaners to restore order. Another significant expense. And the food. Without my home-cooked meals, they were living on a diet of expensive, unhealthy takeout and restaurant deliveries, their credit card bills, I imagined, climbing to new, terrifying heights with each passing day. The final, glorious piece of the puzzle came from a text message from my grandson, Leo. "Grandma, Mom and Dad hired a lady named Maria to do laundry and stuff. She seems nice. But she says she charges $60 an hour. $60 an hour. For the work I had done for free day in and day out for 5 years. The work they had deemed worthless, the work of a freeloader. At the end of my 4th week away, on the day I was theoretically supposed to return from my vacation, I knew it was time for the final stage of my lesson. I did not call them. I did not text them. I just waited. The frantic, pleading phone call from Reggie came on the last day of the month. The day their mountain of new bills would have come due. "Mom," he began, his voice a broken, defeated thing I had never heard from him before. "You have to come home. Please. We can't do this. We just got the bill from the nanny agency. And the cleaning service. It's over $5,000. For 1 month. We don't have it. We're going to be ruined." I listened to his litany of woe, to his pathetic, self-pitying despair, and I felt nothing but a cold, hard satisfaction. $5,000, you say? I replied, my voice calm, almost cheerful. That does sound expensive. It seems good help is hard to find these days. Mom, please, he begged. This isn't a joke. We need you. We were wrong. We were so wrong. You weren't a burden, you were everything. You held everything together. We see that now. Please just come home. This was the moment. The apology. The confession. The admission of their utter, complete dependence on the useless mother they had so cruelly scorned. It was the victory I had been waiting for. But I was not finished yet. I am glad to hear you've gained a new appreciation for my contributions, Reginald, I said, my voice now taking on a new, formal, almost businesslike tone. And I have given your request a great deal of thought. I will agree to come back. I will agree to resume my duties as the manager of your household. A wave of audible relief came down the line. Oh, thank you, Mom. Thank you. I knew you wouldn't let us down. However, I continued, my voice as sharp and as cutting as a surgeon's scalpel, given that you have now established a clear market-rate monetary value for my services, things will be different from now on. My days as a freeloader are over. I will be returning not just as your mother but as your employee. And my employment will be subject to a formal contract. The silence on the other end of the phone was absolute. A contract, he stammered. Yes, I said. A legally binding one. My lawyer is drafting it as we speak. It will outline my specific duties, my working hours, my 2 full days off per week, and of course, I paused, savoring the final devastating blow, my monthly salary, which will be, as you have so helpfully established, $5,000 a month. Plus benefits, of course. I expect you and Simone to sign it before I return. He was speechless. He had come to me begging for a bailout and had been presented with a bill, a permanent, ongoing bill for the very services he had once gotten for free, for the very love he had so callously thrown in my face. His freeloader mother was about to become his most expensive and most powerful employee. The lesson was almost complete. The week that followed my phone call with Reggie was a masterclass in the art of a hostile takeover, conducted from my sister Clara's quiet, sun-drenched living room. Reggie and Simone were trapped and they knew it. They were drowning in the chaos of their own making, their lives unmanageable, their finances in ruins. My offer to return was a lifeline, but it came with a price they had never in their wildest dreams imagined they would have to pay. My salary. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Albright whom Clara had recommended, had drafted the child care and household management contract, with a gleeful, predatory precision. It was a beautiful, ironclad document. It outlined my duties with the specificity of a corporate job description, provision of up to 40 hours per week of dedicated child care, preparation of daily family meals, management of household laundry and light cleaning, coordination of school and extracurricular transport. It also detailed my terms. My salary of $5,000 a month, to be paid on the first of every month via direct deposit. My 2 guaranteed days off per week, a concept that was utterly alien to my previous 24/7 servitude. And my favorite clause of performance review clause, stating that any verbal disrespect or failure to adhere to the terms of the contract by my employers would result in an immediate and legally binding severance package, to be paid out from their own assets. When they received the contract via courier, the fallout was, I am told, spectacular. Reggie had called my lawyer, sputtering with rage, calling the terms extortion and insanity. Ms. Albright had calmly reminded him that the salary was based on the very market rate he and Simone had just paid for my replacement, and that I was, in fact, offering them a discount as I would not be charging for overtime. They were in a checkmate. They could not afford to keep paying for professional help, and they could not afford to not have help. Their demanding careers, their entire lifestyle, was predicated on the existence of a full-time live-in household manager. They had only 2 choices: accept my terms or let their world continue to crumble. They chose to accept. A week later, they drove the 3 states to my sister's house to sign the papers in person. They sat across from me at Clara's dining room table, 2 defeated, resentful figures. Simone's face was a mask of cold fury. Reggie just looked broken. They signed the contract, their signatures a testament to their absolute defeat. My return to their home was not a joyous family reunion. It was the first day of a new job. I was no longer the quiet, accommodating mother. I was Martha Thornton, the professional household manager, and I conducted myself as such. I performed my duties with a cool, detached efficiency. I cared for my grandchildren with all the love in my heart, but my interactions with Reggie and Simone were strictly professional. The dynamic in the house had shifted profoundly. I was no longer a burden to be tolerated. I was an essential and very expensive employee. They could no longer throw a bill at me, they had to pay one to me every single month. They could no longer treat me with casual disrespect. My contract forbade it. The first time Reggie raised his voice at me out of stress, I simply looked at him calmly and said, "I believe that violates Clause 7B of our agreement, Reginald. Please adjust your tone or we will have to discuss severance." He had paled, stammered an apology and retreated. My revenge was not in their ruin, but in their daily, grinding humiliation. Every single day, they were forced to confront the tangible monetary value of the woman they had called a freeloader. Every single month when that $5,000 payment left their account, they were reminded of their profound, catastrophic miscalculation. Their lavish lifestyle was gone, a casualty of their new, most significant household expense. Me. Simone's designer shopping sprees were a thing of the past. Reggie's fancy car was sold and replaced with a sensible sedan. They were forced to live a life of budget-conscious responsibility, the very life they had so long disdained in me. And I, in a strange, ironic twist, had found my own form of retirement. I had my own income, my own legally protected time off. I had my grandchildren, the true, innocent loves of my life. And I had the quiet, daily satisfaction of knowing that I had won. I had not just reclaimed my dignity, I had quantified it, notarized it, and now I was billing them for it, monthly with interest. They had wanted me to know my place. And I had. My place, it turned out, was in charge.